Welcome, one and all to episode number 55. Insert not being able to drive at 55 reference here of this here podcast. This is Endless Conversation Loop. My name's Brandon. I'm joined today for the first time in a long time by my co-host who is...
It's Boom. It's been a minute. I'm sorry because we've been very busy.
Yes, we've had a lot of stuff going on, but that's okay. As we've talked about many times, we have this other thing that comes first called life.
Yeah.
And, it gets in the way.
Yeah, I can't sit and talk video games at my normal job all the time, so this is like the only times that I get to, at least in a more fun setting, we'll say.
Right. But you can't do that if you have your more serious things that have to happen in life first, like, dealing with a little bit of flooding where you're living. Makes it hard to record when you got that.
Yeah, so to catch people up, I had some flooding in the basement of where I live currently, and the good news is nothing really got damaged. The bad news is that it's still kind of not fully cleaned up, I would say. Like, it's not like there's water or anything left. It's more of the trying to get everything organized so that if that does ever happen again, we'd like to prevent that. Because, like, so my grandparents just got, like, this new sub pump battery backup because my dad was the one who actually told them about it. And they need to get that set up, too, so I'm probably going to have to help getting that up. Like, we got extra shelves, we got extra totes, like plastic totes, to kind of put as much stuff in there, so it's, like, whatever it can be to, like, prevent any sort of stuff later is the kind of the big deal. But it's on the upswing. That's kind of the more important thing. I am genuinely shocked my computer has been spared because, like, the tower was on the ground and there was just enough rugs and carpet to sop up enough water so it didn't reach the computer. I am legitimately amazed that, like, it's not dead. Like, the fact I'm even recording is, like, a godsend right now.
I was gonna say, it sounds like a little bit of a minor miracle.
A bit, but here's the problem. This is the second time it's happened. Like, if I had a nickel for every time that my computer's been in someone's basement that happened to flood and just barely miss out, I'd have 2 nickels, which is weird that it's happened twice.
Yes. Very much so, if I can try my terrible attempt at a Doofenshmirtz impression.
Mary the Platypus, what is that accent?
I wasn't trying very hard.
But no, so that's the short version of that whole thing. Things are at least in better position now. Like, my tower has since now been put up on a table instead of on the floor. So at least everything should be in a better place right now. So that's a whole other thing that this weekend is probably going to be more of the cleanup process of that too. But other than that, it's been I don't remember if did we record when I was telling about the MC job that I got too.
Oh yeah, well, we've talked about that a couple times because you've had a few, like, updates along the way. Like, the first time you did it, and then, I remember last time is like, because we've been doing these, like, not always on the same day. Yeah. So, like, I think we had a bunch on Thursdays, which, if I recall, is the exact day, like, the morning after you would have these late nights doing the emceeing.
Well, yeah. And then, we had, like, our big fighting game event, Spring's Edge, up here. And that happened, like, just earlier this month. We're recording in, like, late April, but it was, like, the first Saturday of April when this happened. But that was a really fun time, though. And my first MC gig that I got paid for, so I can't really complain on it. But, like, there's already, like, photos of the event, like, on some of the sites and stuff, too. Like, I'll have to send you some of them, because, like, my outfit was insanely loud, as per usual.
That would probably make for a good visual if I have the time to get those edited into the video version. And yes, for the record, it is April 28th today. The last episode came out on April 15th. The one before that, March 26th. So we've definitely been a little bit more lackadaisical this year on the episodes, but, we've
also had a lot going on. Like, you've got your big boy job that you're doing now, and then there's me who's just trying to get stuff kind of reorganized for, like, the last how many months, which hopefully things will start to kind of improve as this week especially goes on, but I digress. That's a whole other conversation.
You never know. You never know. And the funniest thing in general about, at least to me, about like, okay, we've been kind of in this lull period about sort of releasing stuff, but um, if you look at our analytics, I don't know what on earth happened on April 13th, 2026. 67 streams and downloads.
Woo!
We are now at an all-time total for that of 788 streams and downloads, the podcast.
Look, the day that we get triple digits in one of the episodes, like on just that one, thrilled. Like, now part of it I think also is like I've been able to kind of spice up and like try to self-promote the show and other avenues, so that might be where some of that at least has been coming from, but like at best that's maybe like 5 more people if I had to assume. But because what was the topic on that one?
Well, it's just that when I say it's like 67, that's counting like all the episodes together. The people that chose to do that on one given day.
Well,
the episode though with the, like, if I look at the rankings here, with the most streams and downloads with 29 is episode 32. That was our Paper Mario / card episode. Shortly behind that with 27 is 44, our Stop Killing Games episode.
yeah, which I know there's been some stuff which we'll probably have to talk about that later, because there's a big deal that's happening in June, because we were talking a little bit about that before we recorded.
Yeah, it's one of those that we're in one of those spots where it's like we could talk about every little individual thing that happens along the way, but it might just be better sort of like in that one where it's like, well, maybe we put everything together because like things could actually move forward with something like legally changing in June. We don't know for sure what's going to happen, but the long story short to this point right now is the process is moving forward the way you expect it to. It's just the final step of what you actually get out of that is the surprise, because we could either end up with something changes in the law in Europe, or we could end up with them going like, we don't really consider this that big a deal right now, so we're not going to do anything about it, right? So, but the process is at least like, it's inching a little bit forward.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of video game news, especially since I think the last episode we recorded, so we probably should dig into that a little bit too, like what's all been going on.
Yeah, I know we intended to talk about a certain movie today originally, but
which we will, but there's a lot going on, so
right. I'll talk about it a little bit probably toward the end, but you're right, we have a lot going on. So, do you want to start with something that was on your list of like things that piqued your interest, or do you want to start with something of mine here?
Yeah, we can start. So recently the Steam controller for this year just got released. Or I don't know if it got released, but like reviews have been coming out for it at least, and like it's been very well received so far. I think a lot of people are kind of impressed with like it is a heftier price tag, I will say that, because it's I think $99.99 for us in the US, but there's been a lot of good things that they have been kind of been able to do with, like, I pulled up an article from PC Gamer just to kind of give some idea of like the stuff that they have. Like, they also have like, this is some new hardware that they've got ahead of the eventual console that they're going to be putting out in, like, I think it's next year, the Steam Cube as we're calling it.
The Steam Machine.
Yeah, the Steam Machine. But a lot of people are really liking it. Like, the design's a little weird, if I'm being honest, because, like, so it's very, like, rectangular for some reason. And, like, so imagine, if you will, like a PS4 or PS5 controller, right? Now, imagine the sticks are kind of squished up a little bit more, and here, I forgot to send you this before we started recording, but just so at least you have a frame of reference here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Is like, they've got like 2 touch pads in kind of like where that area between like where you'd hold it is, so it's all kind of one cohesive block. I'm assuming that's like a touch control thing. I don't know the full extent of it, but I don't know if I would say it's like the most ergonomically designed, but like people don't seem to hate the size of what it is.
It's a little bit weird looking to me. Like I don't hate it, but like to me, it's almost like I don't I don't quite know if this is going to make sense if you couldn't like see me making this motion, but it's sort of like if you took a traditional controller, like let's say there're like two parallel lines on a controller, and then you started like angling them more in an X shape toward each other. Like the bottom feels like it's kind of like they're going away from each other, and then it kind of squishes in the middle. And it is in part because of those touchpads, because normally that area where the sticks would be, and otherwise it might be like an empty space because you'd sort of grip around the two handles, right? It's just not really there because they need a spot for the touchpads.
But at the same time, too, like I kind of get what the design is going for, because it's like if you really think about how you hold a controller, like you're not really like concerned about the stuff in the middle unless it's very prevalent. And from what it sounds like, you still can reach the thumbsticks like pretty easily, as well as the touchpads that are underneath it, which is really good in terms of like design to kind of get you all out there for it. One of the things that I did find out when I was looking into this is that, so we were talking a little bit beforehand about how Steam, or not Steam, Switch controllers with like their Joy-Cons has a drift problem and can tend to be a very difficult thing to fix. However, it seems Steam has actually somehow remedied this for their controller. So a lot of the like components on the inside and outside and all that stuff are apparently very easy to replace parts. And it even goes one step further, that they have a partnership with You Break I Fix, or I think it's either You Break I Fix or Let's Fix It. It's one of the stores. I forget exactly which one, but they have like a partnership with them that they will sell parts for these controllers at those locations. So that way it's much easier for people who own one. If something does go wrong, they can just walk into a store, get exactly the part they need, and they can repair it on their own accord if they really want to, which is like a godsend, I feel like, for a lot of these things, where like, because like Joy-Con drift at this point is like basically a meme at this point, I feel like, where it's like, but like the fact that like Steam went as far as, we're going to make sure that there's accessibility so people can fix these on their own if they decide to, because like there's a lot of tech savvy people in the gaming sphere. That's not really a surprise. And I'm sure a lot of people who want to have like these controllers, if something does go wrong, they wish that they could fix these pretty like readily and availably. But like, Nintendo makes you kind of jump through hoops just to get your Joy-Cons fixed a lot of the time. It's almost cheaper to buy a new pair and just toss out the old ones in some cases. But this, I think, is like the best, and I wish it was the minimal practice for all of the gaming industry. Like, it shouldn't have taken to 2026 to be like, yeah, we can sell the parts in these tech shops for you so you can actually fix them. Like, even if I buy the part there and have them fix it, as someone who does not have that tech savvy like ability, that is still more convenient than all the other hoops I gotta jump through. And probably cheaper in the long run, because at least then it's like, instead of, spending $100 or whatever it is for a new controller every how often it goes off, it's like you spend, maybe $50-$60 or whatever it is, I don't know, and be able to have it fixed so it's gonna retain value and be able to work longer because you actually have good parts in there again.
Yeah, I mean there's obviously a lot to unpack there in general, but it's because like then you could start getting into conversations about like, oh, the ability to fix your own stuff, and how like that's been something that like we've almost had to like get codified into law in the last few years, even because like I know that was a big thing with, you wouldn't even think about this, but like farm equipment. It used to be a thing that like, farmers would get their John Deere tractor, and then they weren't allowed to like do work on it themselves. And somehow, to your point, that's the same thing with like game controllers. Now I say that, and also like when I was like 11, 12 or whatever, I remember like with my 3DS, like the original, the crystalline looking one, uh, I had the shoulders. I can't remember if it was each one or if it was the same one both times, but like I remember taking that to a shop and getting the L or the R button fixed on a couple times. So like shops have been able to do this, but depending on the hardware, like it can be easier or harder. So it's definitely nice to see that like this is something that they're specifically touting here, because this is something that like it hasn't, I don't think, been at the forefront of most consumers' minds for a while, like until recently. But now that we're in a place where, like, especially in the last few years, where people are like, I need things to be cheaper. I don't want to buy a whole new controller. I just want to have this one that I spent the money on already and fix it. Yeah, it's nice to have that alternative.
In a way, it's kind of like when you have to like replace parts in your car, like maybe not something major, like but maybe like spark plugs or like burnt out headlight or something like that. Like it's stuff that the normal person could readily be able to do on their own. All they would need is just probably a basic tutorial and like at least some understanding of how the whole thing works. Because like, and I say this as someone with no mechanical insight, but I am the son of a mechanic. Like a lot of stuff with cars, like when it comes to the basic maintenance and stuff, is a lot simpler than people let on. And this is, I think, also kind of a similar vibe where it's like all you have to do is like replace certain parts, and as long as you remember how to put it all back together correctly, you're in the clear. So like if you don't feel confident about, like, that's why you can take it to these stores, which by the way I looked at it again on the article that I sent. It says that the spare parts will be at iFixit, so any of those locations are going to be the ones with these parts specifically. But like that's why you're at that store, and they will probably also be able to help fix it too, so you don't have to be like concerned if you don't feel confident.
Yeah, which I mean, some people might not like. I don't know for sure. I obviously haven't had the ability to like go super duper in depth on this article since it was just sent to me. But like,
Oh, I just sent it so you could at least get a look at what this thing looks like.
yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I think all bets are off once you get into like, oh, you need to be able to solder something, right? If you have to like start using a soldering iron, that's when people would probably start freaking out. But if it's as simple as like, okay, I just need a screwdriver that's like a fairly normal-ish head, and
Or like a
the
piece that
ability
like
to
clicks in or clicks out and kind of thing.
yeah, if it's something that's pretty simple like that, I could see that being like really really useful. But if it's then you start after like getting into using some maybe more advanced tools, then yeah, it's just going to be easier to take it to your repair shop and getting the one part you need, and they take care of it. So, but yes, in the long run, regardless, that's going to make it cheaper, because like, I mean, that's been a problem. Like that was something I distinctly remember seeing reviews of, like the Switch 2's Pro controller, and how it's like some parts are like sort of like, I can't remember if they said it was like glued together, but like that was one of the issues that definitely made or like makes companies like iFixit and Ubreak iFix be like, no, this sucks because this is a pain to have to work on, and that is a legitimate issue.
But from what I've been seeing, like the reviews overall have been like fairly like consistently like, yeah, this is a good product. There's definitely some like, yeah, this might be, a little bit more on the tad expensive side, but honestly, like $100 for a controller nowadays kind of seems on par. Like I would argue maybe you could get this for like, I would say 80 would have been more reasonable, but like this is Valve, so they're probably just playing to whatever the market is kind of dealing with right now, with Lord knows with all the RAM shortages and all that stuff too that's been happening over how many years. So, but the other thing too that I was going to mention, and it's a minor thing I feel like in the grand scheme of things, but like the battery life, from what the reviews have been saying, is like it's at least 35 hours before it even needs a charge, which is insane to me. Like being able to hold a charge that long.
You could basically play it for a day and a half straight.
Basically, yeah. And like That's pretty good. Look, because honestly, you're gonna probably be turning it off after, so like you probably could get at least a solid like week worth of gaming on like if you're like consistently playing every night. But even then, it's like it goes longer. Even if we only get like maybe 2-3 days or something a week just to do that, and then it just is good for a while. So
Right.
and it seems like if I'm looking at this right, you can actually have multiple pairings. So like you can essentially turn it looks like your desktop into like a console with like multiplayer local co-op from what I'm looking at right now. Cuz like they have like a Steam controller puck and it has like there's 4 slots for them it seems like, and you can actually have those attached to it so that like if you want more people to play and they all have a Steam controller, which is cool, but also they all need a Steam controller. So unless the 4 of you have $400 lying around,
Yeah, how many people are you going to necessarily know who are going to buy these controllers? That's a good
yeah,
question.
I think
Or
it's gonna.
but if it's compatible with other controllers, it's a little bit different.
From what I can tell, I think they're more tailored for this specific controller. But I think also
Mm,
like this is more designed with Steam in mind versus like other things you could in theory use it for. Like if
right.
you were to do like Epic Games or something like that, I don't think it works as prevalent, if at all. But it's definitely one of those things where like I think because they're designing a machine that is supposed to be more for their software than anything, I understand the reasoning on that one 100%. So I don't know. I definitely might be looking at picking this up down the road. I don't know if I'd be willing to pay $100 for it, but like if you are a Steam user, I would make the argument, yeah, this would probably be a good investment for you. But like I know between the two of us, I'm the one that uses Steam significantly more than you. So
Oh, absolutely. So, like, I agree. I think the one Achilles heel with it, and I'm not looking at this like when I say that in terms of like, oh, this means you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying like if I'm thinking in the broader market here, the Achilles heel is the $100 price because you look at like, I mean, the Xbox controller sounds, and I can't believe I'm saying this because this is ridiculous in my opinion to even have this thought, but it's like it's normally $65, which sounds downright affordable. uh, then you look at like your basic PS5 controller, and that's $75. And now I've compared it because like it seems like I don't know why Sony would do this, other than that they're Sony and they're weird about stuff sometimes. But like their limited edition dual senses are worth more, even though it's kind of the same controller. And then yeah, you start getting into like the Switch 2 Joy-Con and the Pro controller, and they're pretty much on par with the Steam controller price. So like it to me, the Steam controller is more in that like Switch type area where it's great for what it does. Like what it does very well. But are you going to now then be like, if I had to do the power rankings of the like 3 sort of flagship expensive controllers, I would probably go Switch 2 Pro, then Steam controller, then the Joy-Con, because the Joy-Con are the most expensive and probably the least usable on anything else. The Steam controller is clearly made with Steam in mind. So, and it's like realistically, are you going to use it on anything else? Whereas like with the Pro controller, yes, it's made with the Switch 2 in mind, but it's also compatible with PC. So it's like you're getting the similar price with the PC capabilities. Whereas like with the Steam controller, it's kind of flipped around in that like you're getting the PC capabilities, but unlike, let's say, if price is your main thing, and you don't necessarily need all that stuff, if you spend $65 on a basic Xbox controller, well, then you could use that with an Xbox if you got one, and it's PC compatible right out of the box. So, at that point, it starts coming down to like, what extra features do you want? Because I guess I just feel like at least the potential for the console plus PC compatibility, it's not that it's like the biggest deal in the world, but it's just a nice little like extra feather in the cap to have.
But speaking of consoles, since the last time I think we recorded, we haven't really gotten to talk about what's going on the Xbox side of things. And that's
Yes.
definitely been making waves, I feel like, just in the short amount of time since then. So have we actually talked about the new CEO with Xbox on the show yet, or no?
We have not, but it seems like Xbox is a little bit on. Xbox has been in a weird place, just in general, for a while. Because it seems like they've been really like on the decline, right, going downhill.
They definitely have.
Well, because like you're getting like, oh, where are the exclusive Xbox games? And I just talked about, right? Okay, here, an Xbox controller is pretty affordable. An Xbox console is absolutely not. So that's been an issue.
All right, so to kind of give some preface on this, the new CEO for Xbox, Asha Sharma, and I apologize if I'm butchering that, she took over from Phil Spencer back in February. And she has since basically been making a lot of moves that I feel like it's been kind of almost a win after win lately for Xbox. Whether we're going to see like actually like that translate into, better results, better profits, whatever it might be. I think honestly she's taking Xbox in a right direction that has not been looked at since like for some reason when they started with this whole Microsoft gaming crap that they've been doing with like a bunch of their acquisitions and stuff. And that was kind of one of the big things I was going to talk about with it, because like the big things I've seen recently is like they stopped taking out like this is Xbox strategy. Like they're getting rid of that entirely. There's a promise from her who she says that they're going to avoid, quote, soulless AI slop in games. And I'm like, already you have my full attention at that. Like, I have a very, like, more hate toward AI in the, like, grand scheme of things. I'm not saying that, like, AI can't be useful, but I do think that it should only be prevalent in certain things. In games, like, where it's, this is more about telling stories, creating very memorable music, memorable art. This isn't where AI should be, unless it is to control computer characters that you are fighting with. That said, when I think that announcement was made, because I think if I remember right, she is coming from like Microsoft's like AI division or something like that, there was a lot of like traction against it, because it was like, oh god, it's just going to accelerate the slop in Xbox. And that, like, no, she's actively told them, like, we are going to basically not have this in games moving forward. I'm like, sweet, let's go. And then I think the other big thing that was like talked about recently was like how there's a reduction in the Xbox Game Pass pricing from like, I think it went down from $29.99 to $22.99, and all it took was removing Call of Duty from day one on the Game Pass to just drop that down. One game removal reduced it for $7 per month for everybody. That's just insane to me, honestly.
Well, which it's interesting because, like, you think about it, and it's like, okay, so wait, so we're getting a reduction in $7, and it's all because we're getting rid of basically this one flagship title
on day one. So it's not saying it's going to be in there at some point. It just will not be there day one. So that right, one change is just incredible.
But that also comes with the assumption then that it's like, oh, well, we're doing that on day one because obviously everybody wants to play that, right? So just imagine now if you're somebody who's like, I don't care about COD, let alone playing the new one on day one. And so it's like, basically you've been paying $7 extra. If you've been on Game Pass, you've been paying $7 extra a month for this, for something you don't even care about. And now it's just like more affordable. So yeah, I would agree. That is a big deal.
And like the biggest thing from what it sounds like is that they want to have a renewed commitment to console gaming, which, just even like a year or so ago, it sounded like they were basically ready to say, screw it, we're done with this at Microsoft. And it's like, now they're kind of almost 180ing it to be able to still be in this market with like, you know, Nintendo and Sony and all them. And it's kind of impressive because like I think she said something in a different interview where they're talking about how like their PC presence just isn't there because like, you know, Steam has all this stuff that like from across like all these different consoles, and you know, there's been Sony exclusives as of late on Steam that, you know, come down later down the pipe. But like, how many Xbox titles do you really think about when you go on Steam? It's like not really anybody. It's like Xbox, I feel like, hasn't been really super prevalent since the 360 era when it comes to like gaming, because like you don't see exclusives. You don't see like games that it's like, oh, Xbox is the best way to play it, or even PC is the best way to play it, like for their titles specifically. Because like you don't really hear about a lot of their titles, or you hear about them, but they're on other systems. So you just kind of gravitate toward the other systems.
Depends on how you count the Bethesda, the Activision stuff, though, right? Because, well, that's part of the idea of buying them is like, well, no, it's an Xbox, it's a Microsoft Game Studios game, but
and I can't,
to your point,
and I can't speak
it's not.
I can't speak for them specifically, like all these gamers, but like for me, it's like even after that acquisition, I still don't look at Bethesda games or, you know, all those other games that like they bought, Blizzard stuff. I don't view those as Xbox titles. Like, yeah, Xbox bought you, Microsoft bought you, but like it really doesn't mean anything, I feel like, in the grand scheme of things, especially for games that like have already existed and are still out on other platforms. Like, it's such a weird thing that like you don't really think about like that level of commitment, but it's like if you talk about like Sony, if you talk about Nintendo, you know their games. Xbox, like you get maybe Halo and maybe to a lesser degree Fable, and that's it for me. Like that's all I can think of when it comes to Microsoft.
Microsoft Flight Simulator?
I don't fly.
I mean, it's literally got the
I know, but like
got Microsoft in the name. But yeah, to your point, like it does seem like where Microsoft has been neglecting is in their first party output, because the thought is to the point of what we just talked about, like, oh well, we got money, we can buy Activision. Well, Call of Duty's ours now, so
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now that's a first party game, but it's not. If it's on PS5, it's just not, right? I mean, it kind of is. Like, you look at okay, there's Horizon on PC and PlayStation. Well, I think people still think of Horizon on the PlayStation because that's where it started, and Sony's the one who markets it, right? Or even the MLB games, or MLB The Show,
which has been years kind of crossing platforms and consoles lately.
Right. It officially, like in the last few years, it couldn't be an exclusive on PlayStation anymore, but it's still done by Sony's internal studio. It's got the PlayStation Studios logo on the box. It cites PlayStation Studios in the game. And yeah, it was exclusive on PlayStation for so long because Sony did it themselves, right? So people just, in people's heads, that's a Sony game. You're never going to get that. Like, I mean, you could in the long run get something like with Activision and Bethesda where people think, oh, that's a Microsoft game. Kind of like how to this day you'll still have people who, when they think of Rare, they don't think of Microsoft, they think of Nintendo because that was the N64 games and the Super Nintendo games, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it takes a lot of work to get there, and I think the thing that is probably missing from Microsoft's view here that would make that happen is, the exclusivity. But the trade-off there is, okay, well, if we make, like, let's say they make COD exclusive, okay, well, it's exclusive to our platform, so maybe more people will buy it.
But then all of a sudden you have all that player base that has been committed to those on PC, on PlayStation. Like, you basically alienate an entire fraction of your audience to just making COD exclusive.
Right. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, which goes to sort of like the short-sightedness. Like it probably sounded like a great idea at the time, like, oh, let's buy up Activision Blizzard, then all these things are ours and we get the money from it.
Yeah, and I can't help but feel like that's been kind of a recurring problem, especially in the newer years of gaming. I would say post like 2005, maybe even maybe a little later. But like, just they don't think long term success. They think short term gains and what's going to make me money now. And then that decision bites you in the ass later, and then you're trying to figure out how to cut costs. It's like so some background from me, and I'm gonna give a little inside baseball here on my personal life. So my dad, for the longest time, was the fleet coordinator and chief mechanic for the bus garage for a school district that I come from. And every year, when they go into these school meetings, he would tell them every single time, it is cheaper to run your own bus fleet than to do it through a contractor like a lot of the school districts around here do. And he told them this for basically 30 years until he finally retired. And then immediately after he left, they went to a contractor. It is like insane. And he proved it. He had the numbers every single time and had to convince them every year that this is the right call. But then, like, after he retired, they basically just are lazy and don't want to do it. They were like, well, this saves us the problem right now. Sure, but what he did was to basically save you 30 years of headaches and probably saved you some money overall by who knows how many hundreds of thousands probably after 30 years. And this is kind of in that same boat for me, where it's like, you get these people who are in charge who know nothing about gaming and are only concerned about their bottom line to make more money this year. That, like, when it eventually kind of is, the snake is eating its own tail all of a sudden, because you don't know the long-term necessities to keep the success going. Because sometimes, like, when it comes to gaming, it's not a matter of, hey, we need to make as much money right this second as possible and then coast. It's, we're making a good amount of money, we're getting profits year after year after year, and we can build on those profits to do stuff down the line, which may be improved technology, it may be new studios, it may be hiring more people, it may be new IPs, a lot of things. So, like, seeing, like, Xbox is kind of in that sense of, like, we want to basically put ourselves back out there to kind of increase the longevity, to kind of restore their brand in a way, is already an astonishing change of pace. It feels like a very necessary 180. And I hope for her sake, the new CEO, she actively is going to keep pushing back if they try to keep forcing stuff. Because I think the current climate, especially with, like, as of the time of recording, AI is just not popular. I don't think anyone that I'm aware of personally thinks AI is, like, a necessity. It's like, it can be a tool, sure. Am I going to use this to create? No, because that defeats the point of creating. That just makes you lazy. And I think that's the thing that makes me mad, is, like, how all these, like, AI artists, and I use that very loosely, that they're actively just all of a sudden being like, hey, I made this. It's like, all you did was type a prompt and this just regurgitated something out. And, like, I don't want to see AI being the sole use to create. If it's necessary to kind of, like, we've seen some stuff in the past where, like, there's been, like, AI conflicts, we'll say, when it comes to, like, certain games that use generative AI as, like, placeholders and stuff. Like, the whole Expedition 33 thing. Like, they had some, like, things in there with, like, some of the artwork and, like, the background, like, the posters and stuff were generative AI. Like, it's one thing to have that in there as a placeholder. It's another thing to ship it with it still in it, which that was the case, it seems. And they have at least committed that they were going to put actual artwork in and replace it from the generative AI. So they don't have that in the game as much anymore, if at all. So it makes me happy seeing Xbox is going a route that is, like, trying to basically get back to what I would argue gaming should be. Like, not to be on the soapbox for any longer, but I think they're doing a lot of stuff right. That's just the short of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't want to put too much stock in it yet because it could become something. We just don't know that yet, right? If it leads to something greater, it could be very good. But like without that, um, without seeing it like show itself in the practices, I'm just not fully confident in that yet. And kind of like with your point about AI, it's like, people. I would tend to agree. I think there's, on the whole, a sort of revulsion to it because it is a creative medium. But you look at, like, a few years ago, people were all in on DLSS. That's that super sampling, that AI, where it's basically like they take a lower quality image and then upscale it. But then you look at, like, because I know there's this whole controversy roughly a month ago from Nvidia where they showed off DLSS 5, which is like they upgraded their newest version of it, comparing Resident Evil Requiem, and people are like, well, now they don't like it. They think the DLSS shots, like, that they looked at, look worse than just the main graphics. And so, like, that's sort of where you get into, it's kind of dependent on the use, right? Because if you're looking at something like that, where you're taking, well, this is a game, like, let's say you're using this on your PC. Okay, well, I could have this game rendered at what my hardware can do, and it looks really, really good. Or I could use this and it looks a little bit better, but it's like, it's not, like, at least on paper, the thought is that it looks a little bit better, but it has all those sort of like weird AI tinges on it. But then you compare that, like, I think that's sort of where you get the difference in the use case. That's not necessary. Something where it's like a game that, like, you're on weaker hardware, say portable hardware, right? That's less powerful. And the difference is we're literally just taking that and up-resing that. But along the way, like, when you're getting closer, now we're switching to the actually human-made textures and models and all that stuff in view, right? I think that's a little bit different. So a lot of the AI stuff is going to be really dependent on how people react to things. But yeah, on the whole, I think there's a chance things get better, but kind of to your point too about, like, okay, maybe we're not looking at this so much in the short term. I also don't know if we can be fully confident about that because, we always come back to, I've talked about a few things on here where it's like, well, legally there's a requirement to, like, please the shareholders and make the bottom dollar over anything else. And I was like, I know there's a case on this, but I just can't remember what it was. And I finally had it reminded to me because this was like, I mean, we're talking about like a just over 100-year-old Supreme Court case that, like, literally it is in the law that, like, U.S. companies are supposed to put shareholders at the top over the benefits of, like, customers when they're doing business. It's this Dodge versus Ford case. I don't want to, like, get into that whole thing because that could be a whole separate can of worms, but
episode.
Yeah, right. But like my point here is, like, in putting this all together is there's a lot of good talking. We need to see some good walking, and some of those are going to be dependent on, like, does what they say actually come to pass, and do we find, like, in the case of the AI stuff, where do we find, like, some middle ground areas? Because it's not going to completely go away, right? Once you take the genie out of the bottle, it's here to stay. So, we kind of have to contend with AI, but, like, I remember last year giving a lot of praise to Level 5 for things with like, hey, we're actually like, we're still making some real proper physical games, but also Akihiro Hino, for some reason, is like, he's super McDuper into AI and like generating stuff, and that has a lot of people concerned, including myself, because, yeah, I'd rather have like the next Layton game written by an actual person and drawn with actual art. I don't want to see like to me it's not like a piece of art if it's made purely by AI because it's just mimicking other stuff that exists. It doesn't have that human like thought and passion put into it. But that's different from just, okay, we're using this tool to take something that's lower res and make it like look how it should on like a more powerful piece of hardware for like you people with underpowered hardware. But it's also not, like the DLSS 5 where it's like you've got perfectly good hardware that can put out a perfectly acceptable high quality image. We're just making it like what we think you think is going to be better. Like those are all kinds of different dimensions to it. I don't know. I feel like I just ranted about like 5 or 6 different potentially unrelated things in response to what you just said, but it all kind of comes together. So yeah, we'll have to see.
Now, the one thing I will say, and we were talking briefly before we started recording, is like that it's weird how like with Xbox doing stuff what seemingly is in the good way and kind of going in the right direction, coincidentally Sony decided, hey, hold my controller, and is starting to make some questionable decisions because why wouldn't we want multiple companies to actually care about their customers?
Mm-hmm.
So recently, they came out with this new policy on digital games for their storefront. And basically it's saying that, like, after the March 2026 update, games purchased digitally are the only ones affected. So if you bought anything prior to the update in March, you're still fine, you still keep all that. But they're basically saying that, like, if a console does not connect to the internet within 30 days, the license expires and the game may refuse to launch until a connection is restored. I don't understand why you need this. Like, if you are buying a game and you don't play it for whatever ungodly reason, because Lord knows, as someone who is a victim of video game backlog myself, I have definitely been more than 30 days on a lot of my library. And I don't see the point in putting this, like, stipulation in to just try to keep people online all the time. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Because this is, like, it's screwing up my brain when it comes to all this, because I don't know what to really think about it.
As with everything in life, we start with it's complicated, right? Because on the one hand, remember almost 13 years ago when we got the famous PS4 here's how you share used games video?
Oh,
remember that?
I don't know if I actually know about this. This is, I think, the first I'm hearing about it.
Okay, so back in 2013, when the PS4 and the Xbox One were revealed, the Xbox One was supposed to be always online. That was going to be its thing because of this exact sort of thing, right? They want to make sure that you own the games. And so Sony, making fun of that, did a little quote-unquote instructional video, because the problem is it would also, like, it would screw up used games for people. You basically couldn't resell games because it's, like, tied to your console. So they showed, like, here's how you lend games to your friends, and it literally is like a video of Shohei Yoshida physically giving a copy of a game to someone else at Sony, right? So, like, we've come a long way from that, apparently, based on this. So, but that's sort of the negative way in which I look at this, right? It's like, okay, why? What is the purpose of this? This is basically just like needless DRM, right? On the other hand, I read it and the functionality is if the console does not connect to the internet. It's not basically you need to play this game within 30 days. It's that your console needs to connect to the internet, which I think, sort of going to our discussion on Does It Play a few episodes ago. Yeah, that's a big deal, right? You should not have to, in order to play this game you bought, have to connect to the internet. There are a few scenarios in which I think you could justify it, like, periodically if I go, like, let's say for whatever reason I haven't played Super Nintendo games on NSO in a while, right? When I go to boot up that software, basically it does a check, like, oh, are you still subscribed? Even though, like, obviously I've played stuff online and, like, used other software that would require the subscription. So it knows I've got that, right? So to me, that's not the biggest deal because it's specifically tied to that subscription, right? Like, the thought is I'm paying this money. It's literally just a check on that. I don't own it. I subscribe to it. That's different, right? This is a little bit more like, okay, well, I own this. I paid the good money for it. Why? And I understand that at the end of the day, the answer is going to be, well, it's because we want to make sure this isn't a pirated game, that you didn't just download it from some website elsewhere and installed it to your console. And I get that, but this just seems like, in the case of the PS5, right, fairly late in the game to be getting concerned about that, because I don't know if we forgot about this, but the PS5 came out in November of 2020. It's like getting ready to go to kindergarten.
My knees hurt just hearing that.
So, like, it'd be one thing if this happened in 2020, but now it's 2026, and, like, it just seems a little silly to be worrying about this now. And to your point, at the, like, best case scenario, just creating bad press if it ends up not being something that, like, for 99% of people isn't a big deal. But also, yeah, like, if you don't want your console connected to the internet for some reason after you've downloaded something, which I guess, I don't know, to me that seems a little bit strange, but let's just suppose that could happen. Like, just let the people play the games they spent their hard-earned money on, Sony. It's not that hard.
It almost feels like they're trying to make it seem like digital games are subscription, when it's like, that is not the case. This is a fully made product that should not be sold as a subscription. So I am expecting a lot of pushback on this. Whether Sony bends or not is going to be a whole other thing. But yeah, I would not be surprised if their reluctancy to backpedal on this may screw up their whole plans with the PS6. Because if this is how they're going to do things in the future, this is going to probably ruin the PS6's chance of being, like, the next big console for them. Because it's like, everyone is, like, gearing up to play, like, the next Grand Theft Auto with Grand Theft Auto 6. I know that's, like, a huge thing for a lot of people right now. But can you imagine, like, you buy it digitally and then you're basically told that, because let's say you were gone for, like, 30 days out of the country for whatever reason, and then you come back and you just don't have the license anymore for it, like, you just can't play it. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I could imagine.
Well, see, that's what I'm wondering when I read this, though, is because it's saying, like, at least a little bit that I'm reading, it's validating the license. So if your console stays offline, the game just won't launch, right? So, like, I think, okay, yeah, to your point, let's say you're gone for 30 days and you come back on day 31, you connect the thing to the internet. If it just does a check that you have the license because now you've connected to the internet, that's annoying. You shouldn't have to do that. Like, I think there's the normative thing here, right, is that's not reasonable. But in terms of what actually happens, if you just still get to launch the game and you get to play it, it doesn't become more of an annoyance in practice. But there's also something to be said for the fact that, well, then, yeah, you are normalizing that. So it's a problem, right? Can't
Yeah,
win.
it's definitely going to be a thing that, like, until there is like a firm foot planted, or if they, back down and be like, you're right, maybe we shouldn't do this, and then they, rescind it or whatever. Until that all happens, like, I am almost willing to bet some money that it's like people are just not going to buy digital because of it. Like, I'm sure that, like, there is part of the thought process is I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Sony higher ups would probably be looking at this like, okay, we can do this with digital games. How do we do it with physical games? And I'm like, I will never buy a Sony product again if you even touch the physical stuff.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I was just thinking about that since, we talked about, like, in our keycard episodes. It's not necessarily that much better because, yeah, your Sony games, your PlayStation games are on disc, but the disc, to the point of what this is, you have to install the game off the disc, because that's how the PlayStation takes advantage of the fast load times of the solid state drive. It's not reading off the disc. So the purpose of putting the disc in the console is the same as, like, on the Switch 2 with the key cards. It's literally just a check saying, yep, you own the game, this is the game, right? So in essence, that's kind of what this is for digital. It's the check saying, yes, you own the game, this is your game, you've got it. And that doesn't make it good, but it's like, well, they've already kind of got this built in with physical, if you think about it. So I don't know how much it matters. Although I don't know. I won't go off. I was going to go off on a separate tangent. It's not relevant right now. I don't know. The whole thing is silly. Like, you paid the money for the game. This is like to combat the little itty bitty teeny tiny bit of piracy if it exists out there. Now, that's not an issue. Obviously it is an issue. Like, you don't want that happening. But, like, when it affects so much greater of a portion of your audience compared to the actual issue it's combating, you have to start asking yourself, do we really want to go through with this?
Right, exactly. And I think that's the real big question on this one is it going to be worth trying to do this and potentially messing with a lot of the people that you have in your fan base that's been in your corner for a while? But, like, I don't know. I don't see this being a good move for Sony in the long run. And if they continue to keep kind of pushing forward with this, it's like PS5 might be my last Sony console then. And I'm only saying that as myself. But anyway, we have one more thing to talk about, and it's the thing that we've been teasing for probably way longer than we needed to. But you got to watch the new Super Mario Brothers Galaxy movie.
Yes, I did. So I'm going to try to keep this, because you haven't seen it yet. I'm going to try to leave it fairly spoiler-free here. So I was talking about this with another mutual acquaintance, friend of ours, and, like, he had been talking about this because, like, his brother had seen the movie before he did. And his impression is just like, well, I liked the first movie a little bit better. When I saw the Galaxy movie, I basically came out of it the opposite. I was like, I feel on the whole about the same about both movies, but I like the Super Mario Galaxy movie a little bit better than the Super Mario Brothers movie. And I think the main reason for it is, like, it avoids a lot of the pitfalls that at least I specifically didn't care for in the first movie. Like, in the first movie, they did a lot of scenes, like, at the very start, they do the scene where, Mario and Luigi are trying to get to their, they have to run to the call that they got at this apartment where they get up getting basically attacked by the dog. And during that scene, they play little Beastie Boys in it. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, because they're in New York. I very, very much did not like that in the first movie because I don't think it doesn't add anything to the movie, right? What am I getting from this other than a reminder that, oh yeah, they're in New York, right? They don't have any, or at least like things that like are very out of place or just don't add to the scene at all. They basically have no licensed songs in this movie, and I think it's a much better movie for that, for one thing. I think that shows some restraint that the first movie didn't have, because it's like we're really focused on, okay, let's make this really honest to God Mario movie and not just any other generic animated movie that's out there. Because there's a lot of movies that do that, right? There's a lot of movies that implement some popular song just to get a wow from the audience, like, oh, I know that song. They don't do that, and I think it's a better movie for that. I was very hesitant with a scene like, because they pretty early on get Yoshi, and they do a scene where Yoshi, because at the end of the end of the first movie, the post-credit scene, you see the Yoshi egg in the like underground sewers where they first get to the Mushroom Kingdom from. So what happens early on in this movie? We get to see the Yoshi egg hatches, and Yoshi kind of walks around Brooklyn, and everyone's kind of like, oh, that's a thing. Nobody reacts to Yoshi, which I find interesting. But like in the first movie, there would have been some kind of song there that for me would have ruined it, but they don't do something like that. This might be hard to believe, but I actually wish the movie itself kind of got off to a faster start, because I know a lot of people are probably like, oh, well, this movie is so short and they have to fit all this in, which is true. I think they do fit a lot. Like they did end up having to fit a lot into the movie, but I just felt there was a lull in between, like finding Yoshi and like sort of getting some of the first setup and like really starting the adventure, that I thought was kind of dull. There's a little bit of weird characterization in some moments, like Toad is oddly standoffish toward Yoshi's whole like being there. Like, oh, that I remember seeing in like if you've seen trailers, I'm sure you've seen this, where Toad's just like, oh, there's a dinosaur now, which is like, I think when you compare that to the first movie, where he basically, like, Toad sort of right away becomes Mario's best friend, or at least tries to be, that's sort of a contradiction in character, right? I would think that Toad would be excited then that there's Yoshi, like, oh, cool, we have a cool new friend. What other stuff can I talk about that isn't
Well, I do know
spoilery?
the one big one, because it got spoiled before the movie got released, was the addition of a certain anthropomorphic fox in space.
Okay.
Fox.
Fox.
I know about this.
Fox, I would say, plays a very good role. He is, in fact, Fox, and they explain why he's there. And it's not explicitly setting up some crossover, which, again, very good restraint, because usually you'd think, be like, oh, we're trying to set up some big time, like, oh, universe, and these things are all going to cross over. And they pretty much, I would argue, set it up such that that doesn't have to happen, because Fox isn't there because this is in the same universe. He's there because, spoilers, he entered a wormhole that got him into this other universe, and he's basically since then been trying to figure out how to get back home, right? So there's some restraint there, and that it's like, well, we could keep him here, and we could make this be some like start of some big crossover, but they don't have to do that, right? I feel like there's a little bit more integrity in choosing not to do that. Same thing like with the Pikmin. Literally all they get is a little cameo. You see the ship come out, and they come out of the ship. That's all we needed. All right? Don't make a big deal out of it. It's just there. And I appreciate that level of like, we're not like overdoing the fan service here.
Now here's my question, because there has been some rumblings since Fox was told that they were going to be, or they told people Fox was going to be in the movie. Do you think this is hinting at a possible revival of Star Fox, like, down the road for Nintendo? Because, like, people were excited when they saw Fox. Like, yeah, it was weird, because it's, like, it's a Mario movie, and what is Fox McCloud doing in this? But, like, a lot of people are taking that as a sign as, like, hey, this might mean that we could see a new Star Fox game soon, because considering the last one is on the Wii U, we could definitely use one.
I mean, it's been 10 years. Regardless, we could use one. Like, that's... You could make that case, like, okay, in 2023, we got the first movie, and Donkey Kong was a big piece of it, and then suddenly, a couple years later, we get Donkey Kong Bonanza. So, therefore...
And the revamped look of DK on top of it, too, because it initially, I think, was more based off the movie, and then they kind of repurposed his look to look more very similar to it. I think to get a lot more of the people and the kids who are fans of the movie and be like, oh yeah, DK, even if it's not the one that like I or even you grew up with.
Yes, but then you look at some of the development of that game, and it's like they were working on that game pretty much right after finishing Super Mario Odyssey. So, like, there was already a Donkey Kong game in development. So I guess I would just think, like, it's possible, but I would think if there's some Star Fox project going on and we hear about it soon, it's just already been in development. But it certainly wouldn't, like, I would think that, yeah, maybe the positive reception to Star Fox now, that could kickstart the interest in a project if something hasn't been started yet. We just probably won't see that until, God, who knows? It might be the 2030s by the time we get that.
Probably. As someone who has starved for Star Fox content,
yeah,
I need a new game bad.
Yeah, I would very, very much like one. Myself.
Which this is just me talking at this point. Give me an F-Zero game, please. I beg of you, Nintendo.
F-Zero 99 isn't good enough?
No, it was never good enough. I need a GX revival or something. Like, we've talked about it before. I need to go to those arcades you were telling me about to go to play AX, which, by the way, I didn't tell you about this and I completely forgot about it. I got to play F-Zero AX for the first time in my life because of a convention, like, in Wausau, Wisconsin, of all places.
Oh, wow.
They had it on a console, and I geeked.
Well, see, that's funny, because so like, technically it could do that already, because F-Zero AX is, like, partially included in an F-Zero GX, but you have to use, like,
all the characters, they're all
together.
behind a, like, unlockable wall, where you can get them without the memory card thing that you could put into an arcade machine for AX, but you can unlock them organically from time trials and stuff like that in, like, the actual game. So they are in the code, they're in the game, but, like, it's much easier to just put in a GameCube memory card into the console or into the arcade machine, and now all of them are unlocked. But I mean, when I was playing GX when I was younger, I actually got 2 of them somehow. But I remember one was Daigoro, Samurai Goro's kid. I forget who the other one was though. Like, I did get 2 of them though. But that aside,
I think the only other thing I really want to talk about with the movie right now, without getting into, like, super level details, is the character that I would classify as the movie's protagonist is Bowser. This is a Bowser movie. Because, and this is something that, like, in retrospect, I should have realized, okay, what's the movie, like, when you look at the previews about? Bowser Jr. wants to rescue his dad, And part of that involves some plot with Rosalina, right? So, okay, so if the movie is about Bowser Jr. trying to get his dad, Bowser himself is going to play a big role in that. I think you could just kind of assume that, right? I don't want to say anymore because like the more that I say, the more it's going to spoil it, but I thought it was really like interesting because like yeah, you would assume, "Oh, who's going to be the main character of the Super Mario Galaxy movie?" Well, it's probably going to be the guy whose name is in the title. But it's not. It's really about Bowser and you know, sort of like because he's the one that I would say has the most internal conflict, and you know what they do with it is interesting, and what he like ends up like doing as a result by the end of the movie, I found like I was like, okay, that like I thought it was a very interesting choice that they went with. I thought, you know, I've been praising them for like they've got the right restraint in some areas that they didn't have in the first movie, and then they've got the right I think confidence to do things that like might surprise the audience in the end with it. But what I really, really especially liked with it is the sort of twist that happens with Bowser in the movie. They actually set up a lot of times throughout the movie. Like if you're paying attention, like I just distinctly remember sitting in the theater watching, and the big sort of twist with Bowser, like hearing a lot of the audience or like seeing people reacting like they're shocked. But to me, it wasn't a surprise at all because I'm like, oh, well, no, they kind of like set this up a lot of other times that this twist can happen, or like this is what would happen. Again, I don't want to spoil it, but I was like, wow, like you like as an audience member, me for paying attention and like just knowing the series, I felt very rewarded for being able to predict that outcome. But also for those who didn't predict it, I think it's a very like, whoa kind of moment. So I hope that isn't giving away too much in any sort of way, but I was like, I
don't think
personally
so,
thought it was a
as far as I
pretty
can
interesting moment with it. So, you know, I know like critically this movie isn't getting the most amazingest reviews, and like it doesn't have to. I'm not surprised that it is. I'm certainly not putting this in the pantheon of any like real quote unquote cinema out there, but I enjoyed it. It delivered in a lot of the ways that I wanted it to, and just for like really putting the focus on a character that might not have been expected initially, and just doing interesting things with that. I was, in the end, just kind of impressed with the movie. Like, I was pleased with it. So, you know, hopefully, you know, if things calm down, you can have a moment to go and see it, because I would love to discuss some of the more spoilery stuff, and maybe we can make that a bonus episode at some point, like a mini little thing that I just record and literally just, like, I probably wouldn't even do that much work to it. I'd very likely just throw it up on the podcatchers and all that stuff. But yeah, I was pleased with it. I'm glad I saw it.
Well, I'll definitely have to set some time aside once things calm down for me to hopefully catch it in theaters at least once, because I haven't gone to a movie at a theater in years.
Really?
So I'm very overdue. Like, the problem is like there hasn't really been a lot of stuff that I'm just like, oh yeah, I gotta go see it. I'm just like, I could go see it. I'm just sort of way too busy right now than anything. So
life, it gets in the way.
It gets in the way too much. All right. I think that was the last thing that we had left, so I think we're good to wrap this up for the day.
I do believe so. Folks, if you've been listening to this episode and you've been enjoying it, I'd love it if you could reflect that in some way. I'm sure you would as well. You could, I don't know if you have a heart, if you have a thumbs up, all kinds of platforms have their own unique ways of showing their approval for content. So if you could do that, we would love it if you would click that little button. If you have something to say in response to something we said, you have a couple different options. You could leave a voice message to us at speakpipe.com/endless conversation loop. You could also leave a written comment if you prefer. I want a voice message. We've talked about this a billion times. It's still empty. One of these days we'll get one, though, eventually, and I'll be jumping for joy when that happens. Yeah, I think that's about everything. I'm ready to sign out. My name is Brandon.
I am Boom. We will catch you on the next episode.
That's right. We will catch you next time. Thank you for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.